Thank you.
So why are you here today, sir?
I'm here because I think it's horrifying that our government is moving to fully implement a legal framework that allows for the indefinite detention of American citizens. Like, that's really, really dangerous in that it allows for, especially now that we have extraterritorial prison camps such as Guantanamo Bay, in which U.S. courts don't have jurisdiction. It's pretty awful to have to now have it be that we can put American citizens in there without any recourse. They can be kept there forever. It's like the American gulag. This needs to be stopped. And I'm really disappointed that Senator Patrick Leahy, instead of actually standing up for the rights of his constituents, has taken a key role both in this and in also passing SOPA, which is another thing that's really taking away our freedom. So I'm out here to try to get him to change his position and actually defend us for once.
Thank you.
All right. I am John.
Mr. Tracy.
Hi. All right. Oh, we'll start here.
Annie.
Tyler.
Tyler.
Jonathan.
Okay.
I'm Dylan.
Dylan.
I'm Bill.
Bill. Barbara.
I'm Dave. Nice to meet you.
You want to sit down?
I'm good, thanks.
I'll sit down.
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah, that's fine. Just sitting is no good.
Without getting personal, how's it going?
Oh, I used to be a farmer. One day I went to pick up a compost bucket and I never went straight there.
I actually go to there's a farm health task force group in Vermont, and they actually work on a lot of the stuff and the equipment to use to avoid
the
kind of injuries.
economics. Yeah.
It's just amazing. The number of injuries. And farmers don't normally complain. They just get up and do the job.
And they just walk funny.
Well, you look at them. You know, they come in. That's because they don't call in sick. They just get up and go out and do it every day.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
okay. What you got?
I call this. We're here because there are some provisions in the NDAA that are repugnant, that we, along with many, many people across the country, feel have got to go. They are chiseling away at our civil liberties as Americans. Things that we have come to take for granted, things that are due process, habeas corpus, things guaranteed in the Posse Comitatus Act and the Insurrection Act of 1807, where it's our opinion they have to go. They can't remain. Bernie Sanders voted against it. He made some very, very powerful statements about it and why he refused to sign it. We are offering our services to Senator Leahy and his office to help undo those things. Whatever we can do to help make that happen, we're at your service. That's our purpose here today. We have, from the 5 of us that were originally going to join us, a statement.
We can do that too. Can I ask one favor just so I can keep in touch with you, if you don't mind? Giving me your email address? If that's okay, that's the way just to keep in touch and go further. And as you know, Senator Leahy did vote, and one of the biggest factors was what it does for the National Guard. It actually appoints the Chief of the National Guard on the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and with the deployments that we've had in this country, not only in Vermont, but throughout the country, he fell for a long time. It's up to 50% of our fighting force. It's just they need to have a voice on that board. It has some other additional elements around sexual trauma and assault in the military, mental health outreach for members of the Guard and Reserve, and some FOIA issues. He fought continually, starting back in July, again in October, and with a number of amendments on the floor of the Senate to try to take out some of the more onerous parts of the bill. There was at least one adjustment made. And as you'll see in the President's signing statement on the bill, where he defined how he would interpret the legislation, it pushes back at the more onerous activities that would be allowed by that bill. And secondly, along with Senator Feinstein, he has co-sponsored S2003, which is the Due Process Guarantee Act, which will reiterate again that you cannot arrest and detain an American citizen without a trial and charges. So, you know, it's an ongoing battle. You know, if it was the combination of things, but for him, he had worked so long on the National Guard Empowerment Act because of the impact that we've seen here in Vermont throughout the country. So it was, as often is the case, there are issues you have to weigh, but he will continue to fight for that. He started back in July, and as you probably well know, Senate Judiciary and the Select Committee on Intelligence normally get input on these types of things that were put in. They improved it from the House, they improved somewhat what they had in the Senate, and that didn't happen. And again, in July and October on floor amendments, they pushed back to try to get those adjusted. But
We followed that.
and I'm sure, in fact, we appreciate that the Senator does, that you're willing to help. He's going to continue working on it. The bill that I just spoke of was introduced. It's been referred to the Judiciary Committee. They go back into session the end of this month, around about the 23rd and 24th, and we'll keep working from there. And I also think, have you read the President's signing statement?
And we disregard it out of hand.
Oh, well,
It's a signing statement.
well, there are different
We're not gonna
interpretations
debate.
that, okay, we won't, but there are different interpretations of what a signing statement is.
That's right.
Or the
That's the problem.
Constitution.
Well, the next guy could just unsign it, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, because I was reading the opinions about signing statements, the research they've done over the years. There's 2 or 3 reasons why they can do it. Clearly, if they feel, well, we won't get into the debate.
Right.
And I appreciate what you're saying.
We have legal counsel.
Yeah, okay, so that's, okay, and you wanted to say something.
What's going to happen if the Due Process Guarantee Act isn't signed?
Well, as.
Why vote for the NDAA and then try to make things better with the Due Process Guarantee Act, which isn't guaranteed? So if that's not in place, then the posse commentators, am I saying that right? Act will be enforced, and the president will have control over the National Guard. Then in fact, Vermont Senator Patrick Leahy warned, though few paid much attention, that the 2007 Defense Authorization Bill would serve to encourage a president to declare martial law. I got a lot of information here. He was really against all this NDAA kind of stuff, but this year he went for it. Why?
Well, he continues to, he's a firm believer in the rights that we have given to us in the Constitution. He's been a long-time supporter and will continue. And with the amendment that they were able to support and the work that we'll continue to do, he's going to fight. It's been a long time. You know, when we had an administration that was being funky with the Department of Justice, he pushed back and said, this isn't about politics, this is about what the rule of law is. And I think President Obama has echoed that. And the fact that the NDAA had the National Guard Empowerment Act, and it was very important. The Senator's been working on it for a long time, and I can tell you as a father had a son who went over to Afghanistan. You need to have that member on the Joint Chiefs of Staff making a call about what our military is going to do, whether it's abroad or helping out the national disaster chief. So,
And it's worth trading away.
Oh, he did.
Due process?
he has not traded, you know, he continues to push back. And one of the modifications they made was that you can't indefinitely detain an American citizen, and they'll continue to push back with a guaranteed, Due Process Guarantee Act. I mean, he'll keep working. You look at his history when he's been in the U.S. Senate.
I think
He's always been a strong advocate.
But what happens if it is the Guarantee Act is not a guarantee that it will be passed? What's going to happen then?
You know, we'll just have to keep working on it. Again, it was just introduced on December 15th. So they didn't waste any time putting it in.
In the meantime, Guantanamo Bay has been reopened.
Well, there are provisions.
Tomorrow is the 10th year anniversary.
There are provisions that the administration has problems with about not allowing the transfer. They're pushing back very hard. The Senator feels that our criminal courts, our federal courts, can very well handle issues around terrorists and not being military courts. So, you know, he's been fighting this battle a long time. He's going to continue to fight it. And he hasn't changed his stripes, and he's not going.
I think for me, Mr. Tracy, one of the things that's extremely problematic about this legislation, I certainly hear you. We've all had family members who have been deployed, friends and family who have been killed in the over a decade-long latest bout of conflicts that our country's been embroiled in. But when something becomes signed into statute and becomes a matter of case law and interpretation, it becomes really problematic. And for me, as someone who's voted for the Senator in the past, after seeing his work in the Senate Judiciary, after seeing how he stood up to abuses and illegality and unconstitutional behavior by the previous administration, as you said, I took it as an article of faith that he would continue to play that same role, especially in his own capacity as a senator. So, to me, this legislation, as great as it is for having someone on the court just stuff, is a part of the National Guard, it's extremely troubling to see him put this legislation into play that becomes this your case law versus mine. One administration's interpretation of a signed statement versus another. One with the next administration, whether it's a Romney administration or an Obama administration, value that signed statement or the after the signed statement. I'm not so sure.
Well, the fact is, President Obama's in office now. It's the signing statement that he has put in place. It's how he has clearly defined how he intends to interpret that legislation. Now, there may be a battle about that, but that's what he's made clear. And I note that Senator Leahy, when he had Director Mueller and the Attorney General Holder in committee, was able to ask those questions about how they felt about these provisions that were being proposed, which you see echoed in the administration's position of why they opposed them. I mean, so he was doing as much as he could to highlight what the problems were with these issues. And he had people on sworn testimony to have that. They debated again on the floor, along with Feinfeld, Udall, and a number of others, and they weren't successful. And, so it's an ongoing process. I mean, ever since he was a prosecutor, this is what he's done, and he's going to continue to fight very hard. I mean, I believe in the guy, and that's why I'm working for him, and I'm going to keep doing it. And democracy is always a work in progress, and he's going to continue to do it. I mean,
I think he threw around.
Well, I don't, but I do appreciate the fact, and I will share with him that you're offering to help. I mean that sincerely, and I appreciate the fact you're coming and doing that. Nothing in a democracy is permanent. You got to keep working at it. That's the nature of the beast, and he will. I can tell you, he will.
Well, habeas corpus we thought was permanent, and apparently that's very much in danger right now.
I mean, that's our birthright, is the Constitution. We're born naked in this country with nothing but the Constitution, if nothing else. And so to us, it's really highly problematic when we see people or politicians that claim to represent us that want to take away the most core fundamental rights that we have as Americans. I don't know. I mean, to me, it seems like this is an obvious thing to say, and I almost feel embarrassed that I have to repeat it. But to repeal, I mean, many people have fought and died in our country supposedly to protect our values and protect our Constitution. And does not Leahy have an oath of office to protect the Constitution?
These things are not on the table.
And he has held,
And as leaders in this world, we got to protect the Constitution and freedom, because if we don't fight for human rights, nobody else will.
Dave is 4 years Marine.
We were active duty soldiers up there with us.
That is too one-sided trade, too dangerous a trade, and I think greatly advised.
and I will share it with him. I just want you to know, he's been a long-time supporter of the Constitution. I mean, that's the rule book that he plays by, and he will continue to fight to preserve it. That's what he will do. And, I spent 12 years in the state legislature myself. I'm a veteran. And I understand that there are pieces of legislation where there are parts of them that go in a package, whether they should or not, they are, and they're there. You could go to fight for another day. And I can tell you, by him co-sponsoring that bill, he's going to continue to do what he's done for 30-some-odd years.
But he voted for it.
Because it was important for the National Guard Empowerment Act.
That was a mistake.
Well, and I appreciate your opinion as to the those are the things he had to weigh, and I think he brought enough attention to the issues that were problematic, the ones that you've identified.
There was no openness in that process. If there had been, this legislation would not look the way it did.
They brought that up on several occasions when they were up to Reid, Majority Leader Reid, in July and October, saying the committees of jurisdiction, which are judiciary, and the Select Committee on the Challenge in the Senate, this should be coming through us, and it hasn't. They did that on a number of occasions. And so he's going to, and I don't know what the genesis was of why it came out in the Senate Armed Services Committee, why it came out. I'm still trying to find out myself. But, he will continue to go back and fight, and he will always always protect, I'm telling you, he just will.
But he just didn't, though.
Well, no, he's gonna continue.
That's a clear violation
Well,
of that.
You know, it just, things are not always cut and dry in legislation.
His oath
And
of
I will
office
tell you,
was.
it
Yes.
is, and believe me, Senator Patrick Leahy has always lived up. He takes it very seriously.
Well, obviously not, if he's signing legislation that removes our basic core fundamental rights. That's what we're saying, is we're not agreeing, saying that he did the right thing on this and it's all okay.
Well,
We're saying it's
I
not
understand
okay.
that. I hear that. He's gonna continue to do what he can in the position that he has to make sure that we abide by the laws of this country and the Constitution.
But he didn't.
When is he gonna start then? I
He's
mean,
already,
He
that's
voted
what he's been
before,
doing.
he voted for the NDAA.
He did vote for this bill because it had that particular aspect of it about having the National Guard on the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the mental health outreach, the sexual assault training and protection and for the members of the military. I mean, there were some very good things in that component.
He could have voted against NDAA and then had a due process guarantee act to cover those items you're considering.
We would have lost the opportunity to get the Commanding General of the National Guard on the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And I know this is a different, well, it's not different. All the members of the Joint Chiefs were opposed to having a member of the National Guard on that board. And he's been pushing this, he and Lindsey Graham have been pushing this forever, and that this was a moment we had to take it. And you know, you look back, this is a vote, you look back in history what Senator Leahy has done, and look forward as to what he's gonna do. And he will continue to protect and fight for the Constitution. He will, I know he will.
But if you look back at what he's done over the terms of his service to the country, you know, that's a pretty good pattern of serving our country pretty well. But now with this vote, looking forward, that's a colossal question mark that a lot of people are having a very difficult time doing.
a rough legacy.
And I acknowledge that people are having issues with it. I get it, we get it. And, you know, the senator fought, we're in a democracy. He fought as hard as he could to change those provisions. We weren't able to change one significant provision. And again, regardless of how we feel about the presidential signing statements and what role they play, I think that gave the president ability to reflect those in his signing statements as how he believes, and some many scholars do, that he has that right if he feels it's a violation of the Constitution and how to interpret it. And he has that right as a chief executive to tell his executive branches how they should administer that law, and that's what he's done. And I would suggest that the work that Senator Leahy, Senator Feinstein, and others did helped pave the way to give him that standing. So, but it's just, it's not done today.
Do you think we could get a statement out of him acknowledging that he made such a horrible mistake?
The senator made a decision on a piece of legislation that he felt he had to support because of the work that he was able to achieve for the National Guard empowerment.
Well, I think of the National Guard, they're Americans too, and while he helps them out in some, he's taking away their rights in the other. And they went and fought and died for these rights, and now here he is back home stripping them away.
You know, so I wouldn't characterize it as Senator Leahy stripping their rights. I mean, again, you can look at this guy's record ever since he's been in the U.S. Senate, long before that, when he was a prosecutor. You know, he's always played by the book, and we will continue to advocate and fight for the rules and law of this country and the U.S. Constitution.
Bernie Sanders has an equally outstanding record in supporting the military and veterans, and he wasn't going to let that get in the way. He was not going to trade anything. He was not going to trade away our cherished rights.
I'm not here to tell you why Bernie Sanders votes the way he does. I respect the work of Bernie Sanders.
The Due Process Guarantee Act, from what we've seen of it, does not restore everything that's damaged by this NDAA. We will not be satisfied until something does.
And again, I think what would be helpful, and again, as you want to do it via multiple emails, but share with me the particular items and what your suggestions will be. And I'm happy to share those with the staff in DC, as well as the Senate.
Is there anything more that the Senators plan on doing to help restore the faith of Vermonters in regard to the NDAA? Any other legislative actions that we can expect?
Well, coming right out of the box is this particular legislation that he introduced day after day. They get back there on the 23rd. He's been trying for a long time, the whole issue about indefinite detention, trying to, have his cases tried in the federal courts versus the military. I mean, that's an ongoing struggle that he's been fighting since the beginning. And hopefully the way the administration is interpreting this, they'll be able to, they feel they have the flexibility to do that. So, again, you know, he'll take input and continue to move. I couldn't identify something right now. Right now, it's the legislation that he's co-sponsored and introduced. That's next.
But this bill that he just became a signatory to undermines those exact efforts that you just described to make sure that terror suspects are tried in federal courts instead of military tribunals, by allowing for people who are American citizens to be tried not in federal courts but by military tribunals.
The signing statement.
We're not,
That's part of the discussion. We're not going to get into that.
there is no point in telling us about the sightings, we're not buying it.
And that's
We're
your
not.
choice. I will tell you that I'm willing to accept any recommendations you'd like to make and share them with our DC staff.
The signing statement is regarding American citizens.
Well, they had it, the amendment was added in the legislation that you cannot detain American citizens for an undue lifetime. That was amended in the bill itself.
So everyone beyond that.
Well, the administration, well, it's hard not to slide into the signing statement, but it has definitely trying to find the flexibility they believe they have is to have the Department of Justice be able to do their work. I mean, there are constitutional questions around what the legislation says, and the administration is challenging that and intends to interpret them in a way that does not violate the Constitution.
So there's a,
Yes.
that sheds some light on the ambiguity of this legislation, which is very, very dangerous.
You know, you often, I'm not just saying it's not ambiguous, that's part of the tension between the executive branch, the legislative branch, the Department of Justice, which is part of the executive branch. Senator Leahy's been, you know, that's why he had the FBI director in, and the Attorney General in early on to have them highlight what the problems were with the language in this legislation. Some of it was modified, it's much better than what was in the House. So we tried to improve on something that had issues with it.
But in the end, he supported the legislation,
We did support the legislation.
or he wouldn't have signed it.
And the military never wanted this.
There was broad support from the National Guard and Reserve. That was.
I'm
that's
talking
fif-
about,
That's 50% of our
I'm
military.
talking about the other provisions, the provisions
Oh, right,
that,
and
the
he
provisions that,
he
that,
highlighted that, but still, he was unsuccessful in his efforts to have those taken out. And I think that's what is, you know,
so he made a trade.
he didn't make a trade. You have to make a decision, you know, it's not cut and dry when it comes to a piece of legislation. It just isn't. I mean, there are many things in legislation, and, you know, if you could selectively pick what you liked and didn't like, then.
Habeas corpus
Well, he hasn't.
and due process
I wouldn't-
are cut and dry.
I would tell you that for
And
you
his
to
oath
say
of
that
office.
he traded stuff away, I just don't agree with it. He's been a strong advocate for the longest time. You and I, you know, we can go on for hours disagreeing about that. I'm just telling you, I work for a guy who firmly believes in the Constitution and law on the land and will continue to do his best to defend it. He will, he's done it day in and day out, and I just know it's
He
what
fell
he's
asleep.
continuing to do.
But I think a core fundamental issue, though, I think for me that maybe is getting misunderstood, is you can't defend the Constitution by destroying it. Like that's contrary to defense. That would actually be destructive of it. You see what I mean? So you can't
I
defend
understand what you're
rights by
saying.
taking them away.
I understand what you're saying. He'll continue to fight. He's been a strong advocate, and he will continue to be. You know, believe me, I understand your concerns, your displeasure. I get it. And so what I would ask is that the particular suggestions that you mentioned, send them my way. I will share them with our people in DC and the boss. I mean, well, you know, democracy is a constant work in progress. It is.
And I think that right now it's just really important reminder that the beauty of the fact that we as citizens, you all are actually working for us and supposedly representing what our democracy is through the world, but the hypocrisy of taking away our basic freedoms completely invalidates the war on terror
And he has
basic
made
right
that-
there. But so thank you for listening to us, but also at the same time, it is your job.
Oh,
And so thank you though for bringing it back to the people in DC as hopefully as a reminder that as humans and as United States citizens, we need to have this conversation together, not just the people up there. We'll listen to you, thanks. But we know that we can be listened to. We just need that reminder that we'll actually have our voices be put into practice. So just a
believe
little
me.
reminder of that.
We hear you, and that's why I'm here, so I can
Good.
understand it's our job.
Just making sure we say this out loud.
Oh, I got
so
it.
that- Yeah.
And you know, one of the bosses continually said, you know, the example we set for the rest of the world, and when we do things like indefinite detention, trials are just, we start with. So it's a cause he's been fighting that since, as much as he can, to make things work right since 9/11 when things just changed. It's been a constant battle, and he will continue. I understand that sometimes there's bumps and.
What's his position on Guantanamo? Because the NDAA also codifies into law the continued existence and funding of that program. So he's in support of Guantanamo too?
No, he's continually expressed his concern about the inability to transfer inmates or detainees at Guantanamo to have them tried whether here or in the country of origin. He's continually expressed that. Congress has driven, they won't allow funding for transfers from Guantanamo, but he's been pushed to get that so it actually works, and they have, you know, a right to trial and charges. But he's been working on this since the beginning. It's been a long process.
I think many of us are aware of the Senator's efforts in that regard, and at least speaking for myself, I'm appreciative of those efforts, but at the same time, this vote really calls that into question. And I just wonder, I mean, we just had a demonstration outside the Light Temporary Parks. It was really interesting to me that it wasn't just your typical liberals who were supportive of the demonstration. Having active duty military out there, having folks who definitely don't identify as liberals or Democrats or progressives, but very clear Republicans and conservatives who very much appreciate those fundamental liberties, also being very supportive of the demonstration. I've been organizing in Burlington for a long time, and so I just wonder if the Senator's at all concerned about any sort of electoral accountability that might arise out of this, because this is clearly really troubling to not just a small subset of protesters, but a broad cross-section of Vermont.
He takes his job and his responsibility very seriously. He's always been a man of principle. In fact, we're sitting here now having a discussion about what the issues are. And I believe it. I will share with the chat that we had, and also with I've got a defense LA down in DC that you share, saying, hey, I met with this group, this is what I heard. I mean, that's why I'm here. And so I get that. And, you know, I understand the military side and the perspective that brings. I mean, one of the reasons I personally got into politics because I did some time in Vietnam and I saw what happened. I wasn't going to sit on the sidelines when I got back. So that's why I'm doing what I do.
One way that Occupy, did you have something you want to add, Brent? One way that Occupy Vermont is likely to help is by submitting to your office a list of what we expect to see in the defense of due process, or what's the name of that? Due process guarantee bill. What our expectations are that for what we want to see in there that will restore what was undermined by the NDAA.
Well, you know, share those with me. I'm happy to share those with you. So it would be helpful, if you give me your emails. That's whether you want to give me multiple emails, or, you know, if you want a point of contact, whatever you want to do that. But I'm happy to.
I'm on the mailing list.
I know that
On the
you and I
ladies.
haven't communicated with you. We want to talk about it.
not directly, but through the office I have. But we can all give you our
I just think
emails.
that way I can literally share what you've shared.
So this won't get us put on any list, right? I mean,
No!
with the new
No,
legislation.
no, no.
What was that?
This won't get us put on any list with the new legislation.
No, of course not.
Nah.
You know, what we do, we have an IQ system, just so you know, whenever someone calls, we log in, this is who called, this is what the issue was, and we send it down to DC and direct it to the person who works on that issue, saying, just so you know, we got a phone call or a letter, this is what they, you know, so that we
And the,
have that
NS, and the
system.
NSA gets a copy.
Who knows? We don't have those kind of lists. And if you just want to have one person, I mean, my point is, for me to be able to share specifically what you allow me to share.
We work decentralized, so.
Okay, so I mean, whatever works for you guys, but you make
Sure.
Suggestions, and, you know, I can't promise you the moon and say, yeah, it'll all be in there. I will.
This will be a reoccurring theme, though. We're not content.
This is not the moon. We're not asking for the moon. We're asking for our rights to be restored.
Absolutely.
Why'd you go to Vietnam?
I'm sorry?
Why'd you go to Vietnam?
You know what's interesting? I actually volunteered because I grew up watching John Wayne movies and stuff.
To defend the Constitution?
Well, I felt it was an American, it's what I should do. I mean, the stuff, you go through a lot of towns and villages in this state, and that's things that Senator Leahy has worked on, the farm to school programs, the organic standards for farms. I mean, the stuff that you don't see in Vermont, you kind of take for granted. clean up Lake Champlain. I mean, he's been investing for years trying to build and maintain communities that we need. I mean, it's not sexy stuff, but he's been doing that. I mean, you know, he just has been.
So that wonderful legacy is being undermined by what a lot of us consider grave violations of our basic rights. And we knew when we came in here that there would be other legislation that he supported that would be the excuse for in the NDAA approving the NDAA. That's how politics works. They put something in there that you have to sign on, so you're willing to compromise to be able to go on to sign the big bill. But a lot of this, I mean, we knew that we were going to get the talk that you gave us about justification for this. I think a lot of us expected that. But I don't want you to be left with the opinion that we were satisfied with that.
I've done what I can do on it.
Okay. And I mean, I understand that you're in your position, but it's going to be a theme. It's going to be a reoccurring theme. Because to me, I look at, as a birthright to my children, I have an absolute obligation to be able to defend the Constitution and defend the rights we have, and look at the progression of rights should be the expansion of rights, not the retraction of them. So if anything, it would be nice to work on expanding rights rather than retracting them. And in no way, I mean, there's a big movement, a lot of people who are very emotionally upset about this, a lot of people who are patriotic that believe in the Constitution as one of the core fundamental documents of our nation. And if they see anybody for any excuse on any side of the aisle, regardless of what else they've done, then it's going to be problematic. Like, I can show you individuals who have done wonderful, wonderful things, but then they can do something that's so atrocious that it overrides all of those other things. Like, you know, I could be a wonderful gardener and I make the best cookies in the world, but if I go out and kill a child, that's what I'm going to be remembered for, not all the cookies I made. So, granted, we know that Leahy's done wonderful stuff. He's probably one of the most progressive ones in the bunch, which isn't saying very much. I appreciate a lot of the work that he's done, but for this to be his legacy, to be a signatory to one of the most harmful pieces of legislation that the American people have ever seen, is really problematic, and it would be seen as, perhaps by some, as if perhaps treasonous or un-American or unpatriotic, because we see, like, one thing we're supposed to stand strong in the war on terror is that we have certain rights that we're not going to allow terrorism or anybody else to remove from us. And then when we see our own politicians, these guys are doing what Osama never could, actually destroy the Constitution of the United States of America. We're not going to be satisfied with just understanding why he did it. We want to see what he can do to undo it.
He's been a long-time defender and will continue to be. Gladly take the input that you give to me and share it with our colleagues in DC.
And we will do that.
I hope you do.
And we will hold them accountable. As we do, because we are occupied.
Well, I appreciate you coming in and taking the time.